They called me the one who gave up. They never asked what it took just to keep breathing. 3 years ago, my mother framed my Columbia Med School acceptance letter like it was a family heirloom. It used to hang in the hallway beside Nathan's first place science trophy and Dad's Harvard MBA photo, a sort of family achievement shrine. Last week, I archived the email version, just before deleting the student loan dashboard for good. The final balance blinked zero, not because anyone helped me pay it off, but because I'd worked, scraped, and rebuilt myself through late nights and library sessions while teaching tech to people who thought Wi-Fi was still optional. This morning started like most Sundays. I brewed my own coffee, black, no sugar, and patted across the creaky hardwood floor of my apartment above the used bookstore on Boylston. Outside, Boston had that brittle November chill, the kind that didn't bite yet, but warned you the bite was coming. My windows fogged as I opened my laptop, logged into ElderPath, and pulled up Mrs. Kaplan's profile. She was 82, lived alone in Dorchester, and had never seen her grandson in California outside of old photos. Today would change that. We spent 40 minutes fighting her microphone. She called it the little bastard box under her breath, then apologized with a smile so sweet it made me laugh out loud. "Darlin', I don't think this machine likes me," she muttered as I guided her through the settings one more time. When her screen finally lit up and her grandson's face filled it, laughing, alive, real, Mrs. Kaplan gasped, covering her mouth with a trembling hand. "You brought my baby into my living room," she whispered. That moment doesn't make headlines, but it changes something. In her. In me. I logged off heartful and texted Zoe to remind her we'd need to run new accessibility tests next week. She replied instantly with a Gen Z thumbs-up gif and 3 rainbow hearts. She was 19, brilliant, and called me boss like it was a compliment, not a job title. By 5, I had showered, changed into a soft gray sweater and black slacks, and stood outside my parents' house in Brookline. The porch light was on. The same cracked welcome mat still read, "Live, laugh, love," though no one in that house had laughed without layers in years. Dinner was roast chicken, mashed potatoes, and a side of expectations. My mother greeted me with a kiss on the cheek and a once-over glance that paused just long enough to say, "You're still single then." "Hi, Mom." "Hi, Dad," I said, stepping inside. Nathan and Claire were already there, sitting close on the living room couch, hands loosely twined. Claire gave me a warm smile. I nodded back. We hadn't talked much, but she struck me as genuine in a way that didn't require performance. Dinner conversation orbited Nathan's new promotion and Claire's parents' upcoming visit from Connecticut. Dad beamed when Nathan mentioned the hedge fund job. Mom laughed too loudly at a joke about interest rates. I passed the rolls. Halfway through the second round of wine, Nathan cleared his throat. "We have an announcement." Claire's fingers tightened slightly around his. "We're getting married," he said, grinning. Mom gasped like someone had won the lottery. Dad raised his glass. Claire blushed and leaned into the spotlight. I smiled. Said, "Congratulations." Clapped gently. No one looked my way. A beat later, Mom chimed in. Nathan's always been the practical one. So focused, so grounded. Maddie's... She looked at me with a strange softness, like I was a puzzle piece that no longer fit the picture. Still finding herself. The room didn't pause. No one flinched. It was said the way people comment on weather. Light, undeniable, and devoid of curiosity. I put down my fork, chewed quietly. Thought about Mrs. Kaplan seeing her grandson for the first time in 3 years. Thought about our waitlist of 87 seniors. Thought about the contract we'd just signed with the Massachusetts Public Library Network. Still finding myself. Dessert was a store-bought cake with Nathan and Claire's names piped in icing. While they posed for a photo, my phone buzzed in my lap. New video testimonial. Submitted, Claire Benton. My breath hitched. I reread the notification twice. Claire? I glanced up at her across the table, laughing now, leaning into Nathan's shoulder, completely unaware. I excused myself a few minutes later. Said something vague about an early workday. No one tried to stop me. As I stepped outside, the air cut sharper than before. My fingers curled tighter around my keys as I crossed the street. Back at my apartment, I kicked off my shoes, tossed my coat on the chair, and sank into the worn fabric of my desk chair. The laptop flickered to life. I logged into ElderPath's admin dashboard, scrolled to the Stories That Shine submissions, and hovered my cursor over the newest file, Claire Benton, .mp4. My thumb hovered over the trackpad. I didn't press play. Not yet. Back home, Maddie watches Claire's name hover over the play button. She didn't know who I was, but she said thank you like I had just handed her a miracle. The video loaded slowly, buffering for a second before settling into the still image of Claire Benton seated on a beige couch beside an older woman with snow-white hair and warm, tired eyes. A potted orchid sat on the end table. The lighting was soft, deliberate. Someone had cared enough to make the moment look as intimate as it felt. Claire's voice came first. "This is my grandmother, Ruth," she said, smiling gently. "Last year, we didn't think she'd make it through the winter. She stopped calling, stopped eating right. My mom said she just shut down after my grandpa died." Ruth looked directly at the camera, face solemn but alert. She was holding Claire's hand. Her grip seemed steady, not frail. Claire continued. "Then we found ElderPath. Or more accurately, Grandma found it, through one of her friends at church who swore it had unlocked the internet for her." There was a soft chuckle from off-screen. "She started with video calls, just once a week at first. Then online groceries, she ordered tomato soup and forgot to check low sodium. But we laughed about it for days. Eventually, she learned how to pay bills online, book her own doctor appointments, even send family group emails." The camera shifted slightly as Claire exhaled. Her voice cracked at the edges. "ElderPath didn't just give her tools. It gave her purpose again. It gave her back to us." Ruth's voice, quiet but firm, filled the room. "You helped me feel human again." Claire blinked hard, then added, "She passed away this spring, but not before she taught her church group how to use the calendar app." Her laughter was thin, held up by grief. "She died feeling connected." The screen dimmed, playback ended. Silence replaced it. I stared at the screen for several seconds before moving. The cursor hovered over the pause button like it needed permission to exhale. I didn't cry. Not yet. I just sat back, swallowed the rising tightness in my chest, and let the truth settle. Claire, my brother's fiancée. The woman who had just announced her engagement while sitting across from me like I was the forgotten +1 to my own life. She had no idea I'd built the thing that had brought her grandmother back to her. No idea that the person she was thanking, Olivia from ElderPath, was the same Maddie who passed her the salad bowl last night while her future mother-in-law bragged about Nathan's promotion. And somehow that made it more honest. My eyes flicked toward the USB drawer. I hadn't used one in months, but instinct took over. I grabbed the clean silver drive, slid it into the port, and transferred Claire's video onto it. No label, no date, just a backup, a reminder. I clipped the USB to my keychain, not as ammunition, as armor. The next morning, I skipped the coffee shop and headed straight for the ElderPath office. We rented space in a shared startup incubator in Cambridge. High ceilings, exposed brick, an espresso machine that only Zoe could make behave. She was already there, earbuds in, furiously typing code. When she saw me, she pulled one butt out and grinned. "Boss, you're early." "Yeah," I said, dropping my bag onto the work table. "Couldn't sleep." She gestured at her screen. "I was just testing the new onboarding wizard for users who've never touched a keyboard. It asks, have you ever double-clicked? And if they say no, it does a little animation demo with a cartoon cat." I nodded, impressed. "The cat thing is cute." I named it Pixel. Because pixels. I smiled, distracted. "Hey, can you run a test on the Stories That Shine submissions? Just to make sure there aren't any playback bugs?" Zoe swiveled her monitor. "Already did. Why?" "I watched the one from Claire Benton." She paused. halfway through sipping her energy drink. Claire Benton. Then she blinked. Wait, Claire? Like, Nathan's Claire? Her voice landed in the air like a pin dropped on marble. I didn't answer, just looked at her, my eyes giving away what my mouth didn't. Zoe leaned back slowly, eyebrows raised. Holy shit. I didn't correct her, didn't tell her not to swear. We weren't in church. And even if we were, maybe this moment still would have felt sacred. The USB drive clinked lightly against my keyring as I turned back toward my laptop. Zoe didn't ask what I was going to do with the video. She didn't need to. Zoe glancing over Maddie's shoulder. Wait, Claire? Like, Nathan's Claire? No one ever asked what I was building. They only asked why I wasn't more like Nathan. Outside the cafe window, Boston was all sharp wind and amber leaves. November pretending to be December, rushing into cold before anyone was ready. Inside, the warmth hummed from mismatched mugs, a playlist of soft indie guitar, and the hiss of milk steaming. I sat across from Zoe at our usual back corner table, her hoodie sleeves pushed to the elbows as she tapped furiously at her tablet, stopping only to take bites of her pumpkin muffin. They want you on a podcast, she said, not looking up. I blinked. Who? Aging in the Digital Age. Hosted by some nonprofit in Vermont. They saw the Ruth Benton video and emailed our press inbox. Of course they did. I hadn't stopped thinking about that video either. Zoe kept talking. Also, I checked the metrics. We're trending in 3 senior Reddit forums. One guy called you the anti-ageism Steve Jobs, which is weird but kinda cool. I stirred my coffee, letting the spoon clink softly against the ceramic. Thanks for checking. She finally glanced up. You realize people are starting to recognize you, right? Like, you're kind of a thing. I smiled without showing teeth. Only outside my house. Zoe's eyes narrowed. She knew what I meant, but didn't push. Instead, she pulled up another screen. The Massachusetts Office of Elder Affairs wants to expand our pilot into 6 more counties next year. They asked if you'd come in and talk strategy. I was about to answer when a voice broke in from the next table. I'm sorry to interrupt, but are you Maddie from Elderpath? We both turned. A woman in her 40s, olive coat still zipped, was holding a paper cup and blinking at me like I'd just stepped off a magazine cover. I thought I recognized your voice, she said. My dad uses your platform. He sends me memes now. Real ones, not screenshots of Word documents. Zoe snorted. I just wanted to say, thank you, the woman added. We haven't connected like this in years. He even figured out how to send bitmojis. I didn't know he had that kind of whimsy left in him. I laughed, genuine, surprised. I'm glad he's enjoying it. She gave a little wave and slipped out, her coffee steaming behind her as she disappeared into the chill. Zoe waited 3 beats. You still going to pretend you're invisible? I didn't answer. Just pulled my phone out of my coat pocket as it buzzed again. Mom. Remember? No black, no pantsuit, something soft. Claire's family is traditional. A second later, Mom. I sent you photo ideas. Think elegant but understated. Nothing that screams activist. I showed Zoe the messages. She made a face. You'd think she was dressing you for a debutante ball, not her own daughter's humiliation. She calls it tradition. She calls it control. I closed the screen. I'm not going for her. Zoe tilted her head. Then why go at all? For me, I said, and maybe for someone else. That night, I stood in my closet longer than necessary. The navy sheath dress from last year's tech panel felt too formal. The wrap dress with sunflowers screamed summer optimism. My fingers landed on a sleeveless emerald green dress I hadn't worn in over a year. Clean lines, no frills. Simple and quiet, but bold in the way moss forces itself through stone. I held it up to the mirror. It was mine. Not my mother's, not Claire's, mine. I laid it on the bed and walked to my desk. The USB with Claire's video still sat clipped to my keys. I didn't plan to show it, but I wanted it close. I slid it off and slipped it into the small zipper pocket of my purse. A quiet weapon. Not to be fired, but to remind myself I wasn't walking in empty-handed. As I zipped up my coat, Zoe asked, "You sure you're just going to sit quietly while they praise Nathan?" I came prepared to be overlooked. I didn't expect to be unmasked. The restaurant was all glass and gold, upscale in the way that made the lighting dim on purpose and the bread come with truffle butter. Outside, Boston's late autumn clung to the windows in smudged condensation, but inside everything was curated warmth. I arrived 10 minutes early. I always do. The host led me past marble-top tables and elegant hushed conversations to a long private dining setup tucked beside a wine wall. 14 chairs, crystal glassware, a printed menu with Nathan and Claire embossed at the top. I exhaled slowly and smoothed the emerald dress against my hips. My mother spotted me first. Her eyes flitted down to the hem of my dress, then up again, resting too long at the neckline. "Oh," she said. "You came." "You asked me to," I said, steady. "Well, I'm glad." She wasn't. I could read her mouth better than any speech. That tight smile was her default for anything that disrupted her narrative. She directed me toward a chair. End of the table, of course, near the potted fern and slightly out of the main lighting. I took my seat without resistance. The guests trickled in. Claire's parents, both Ivy League, both wearing expensive restraint. Nathan's colleagues, one shaking hands like he was closing a deal even before the wine poured. Claire and Nathan arrived last, glowing with the kind of polished joy that's been rehearsed for photographs. Claire hugged everyone, including me. She didn't say much. I didn't expect her to recognize me. Not like that. Dinner moved in courses, salad with candied pecans, pan-seared halibut, a root vegetable medley that looked like a Pinterest board. Toasts came between bites. Nathan's boss said something about vision. Claire's father talked about legacy. My mother chimed in with a delicate nod and a line about how Claire was such a grounding presence for Nathan. Exactly what he needed. I chewed. I nodded. I passed the butter. Then, just as dessert arrived, lemon tart with sugared rosemary, Claire turned to me. "So, Maddie," she said, light and curious. "What is it you do again?" The table quieted just enough. Not entirely. Just the way people pause when the conversation veers off script. I kept my voice even. I run a digital literacy platform for older adults. Elder Path Claire blinked. "Wait, like online classes?" "Not exactly. We specialize in adaptive systems for long-term engagement. Accessibility tools, large text navigation, voice input. We work with libraries and community centers." There was a pause. Then she stared. Really stared. Her mouth parted just slightly. "You're the Maddie from Elder Path?" Her voice dropped into disbelief. I said nothing. Claire stood. Slowly. Her napkin fell to the floor unnoticed. "You helped my grandmother live her last year with dignity," she said, voice trembling. "I submitted a video. I relied on you and didn't even know." Silence. Not polite. Not awkward. Stunned. Her father straightened. Her mother placed a hand to her chest. Nathan looked confused. My mother froze, dessert fork halfway to her mouth. "I can't believe I'm just realizing it now," Claire continued. "She called you the girl who taught me how to matter again." I thought she was exaggerating, but no. She meant you. She meant this. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. The room listened to the echo of her words. For once, they weren't asking Nathan about hedge funds or wedding venues. They were watching me, watching her watch me. Nathan turned, eyes narrowing. "Why didn't you say anything?" Maddie replied softly. "No one ever asked." There was nothing left for me to prove, but suddenly they were all listening. The silence hadn't shattered so much as shifted. softened into murmurs, glances. The scraping of forks resumed with less certainty. Claire had sat back down, still wide-eyed, her hand on the stem of her untouched wineglass. Nathan's gaze flickered between the two of us like he was trying to process a new equation that refused to balance. I remained seated, still, steady. Zoe's voice echoed faintly in my head. "You've already won. They just haven't figured it out yet." Across the table, Claire leaned forward again. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to call you out. I just couldn't believe it. Elderpath helped my grandmother after Grandpa passed. She was so lost. And then suddenly she was texting me on Wednesdays like clockwork. She smiled faintly, almost to herself. She called me once just to tell me she'd learned how to block spam calls. She was giddy. Someone 3 seats down, a woman in a navy pantsuit with a pin that read Bain and Company, tilted her head. "Wait, Elderpath? You're that Maddie?" I nodded, eyes meeting hers. "My mother sends me Wordle screenshots now. It's a menace. But also, you did that?" Another nod. A low laugh rippled down the table. Someone clapped quietly. Toasts were forgotten. Nathan's boss cleared his throat, awkwardly offering another pour of wine. I watched the power shift. Not dramatically, not with fireworks, but like water seeping through cracks in stone. Claire turned toward her uncle, seated beside her. "Uncle Brian, didn't you say your foundation just launched a new tech fund?" He raised an eyebrow, interested now in a way that felt clinical. "Women-led platforms, socially impactful, scalable structure? What kind of growth are you seeing?" "We've reached over 80,000 active users," I said. "Community partnerships in 3 states. Most of our seniors interact weekly. Our longest-running user just turned 94. He nodded, impressed. "We should talk Monday. I'd like to hear more." Nathan leaned toward me, quieter now. "You built all that alone?" I turned my head just enough to look at him. Not alone, but without applause. He flinched, just slightly, then offered the faintest smile like he didn't quite know whether to be proud or ashamed. I didn't care either way. The energy in the room had changed, not in my favor, in my reality. People weren't ignoring me anymore. They were recalibrating. Not because I raised my voice, but because truth, once spoken aloud, refused to fit back into the silence. When the tart plates were cleared and coffee had replaced champagne, the guests began to disperse into groups. Murmurs by the coat rack, laughter in little semicircles. My mother remained seated, her expression unreadable, a hand resting delicately on the tablecloth. Then she stood and came to me. We stood near the large floral arrangement at the corner of the room, behind the soft thrum of ambient jazz. She didn't reach for my hand, didn't clear her throat, just looked at me with a strange tightness in her jaw. "Why didn't you ever tell us?" I met her gaze, voice low and even. "Would you have believed me?" They didn't apologize, but they stopped pretending I was small. A week had passed since the engagement dinner. The emails had trickled in, some from Claire's family, a couple from guests I barely remembered speaking to, and one from Nathan that simply said, "Proud of you, really." I hadn't replied, not out of anger, just out of clarity. Some things didn't need answering. Monday morning, I found an envelope on my doormat. No return address. The handwriting was familiar. Slanted cursive that had once labeled every lunchbox, every birthday card, every folder in our childhood kitchen drawer. I read it standing in the doorway, coat still on. "Dear Maddie, I watched the video Claire sent me." I cried. Not because I didn't know what you built, but because I never bothered to ask. I was so focused on what you walked away from, I never looked at what you were walking toward. You did what no one in this family ever had the courage to do. You failed and kept going. And in doing that, you taught people how to find their voice again, including me. Love, Mom. I folded it slowly, no tears, just a stillness, a soft settling of dust. I didn't frame it, didn't pin it. I tucked it into the drawer by my desk, right beside the USB Claire's video still lived on. That afternoon, Claire arrived at my apartment with a folder, a reusable coffee cup, and an energy I hadn't seen from her before. Not excited. Committed. She laid everything out on my kitchen table. Notes, names, bullet-pointed pages of pitch deck advice. "I've been thinking," she said. "There's a foundation I volunteer with. Dr. Evelyn Monroe runs it. They fund digital inclusion work, especially for underserved groups. I showed her your work." I raised an eyebrow. "You did?" She said, "Tell her I want to meet." "So, I'm telling you. She's in town Thursday. Coffee?" I nodded, more from instinct than decision. Claire smiled, a little nervous now. She glanced around my modest space, bookshelves sagging, secondhand chairs, and then back at me. "You changed more than one life," she said. "I just happened to notice." Later that week, at the community tech workshop in a converted rec center, I watched as 3 older women giggled over emoji use, and a man in a Vietnam veteran's cap proudly showed off his new ability to unsubscribe from spam emails. Then a hand gently touched mine. She was 92, tiny, with eyes the color of faded sea glass and a voice like creased velvet. "I'm flying to meet my great-granddaughter next month," she said. "First time in my life. You helped make that possible." I smiled. Didn't cry. But my hands trembled slightly as I replied, "It was my honor." That night, I walked home through streets lit by old gas lamps and holiday string lights, the kind that made the whole city feel like it was humming in low gratitude. In my apartment, I flipped on the desk lamp and pulled a sheet of printer paper from the tray. I typed a quote. "They'll say you failed until the day they asked how you did it." I taped it to the fridge. No signature, no punctuation flourish. Just truth. A soft chime pulled me back to my screen. New email. Subject: TEDx Boston 2024. Speaker invite. I smiled, didn't open it yet. She never raised her voice, but the silence that followed her truth was deafening. In a room built to celebrate someone else, it was her story that redefined the narrative, and no one could unsee it again. Justice didn't come with fireworks or apologies. It arrived quietly, carried by clarity and undeniable impact. Like the final chord of a long-forgotten melody, justice may arrive late, but it resonates powerfully once it's heard. Sometimes the loudest revenge is simply being undeniable. No wall of lies can stand forever against the tide of truth. If this story spoke to you, don't forget to like, share, and comment below. Drop a 1 if you felt seen.